Well, what I'm intending to do here is just to give you an overview of my life when I became an elder and what I experienced thereafter. This isn't meant to be my full life memoirs or anything like that, but just something just to give you a little bit of an overview and an insight into my life. I hope it's of use to you. Well, look at that. There's part of Peterborough Cathedral. Thought I'd visit Peterborough today. It's part of Cambridgeshire where I am, so thought we'd give it a bit of a butcher's hook. We thought you might like to see it too. Judicial committees always seems to be something that gets questions. A lot of people are interested in judicial committees. How are they formed? Okay. Well, somebody gets dobbed in, somebody gets ratted out, or they confess to doing something that the Watchtower, not necessarily the Bible, but something that the Watchtower doesn't like, the Watchtower organisation cult doesn't like. So 2 elders, minimum, normally, go to see the accused or the confessing person to ask them, what you been up to? It's like a fact-finding sortie, if you like, a reconnoitre to get damning evidence against the person. So anywho, they arrange a date to meet. If there's any witnesses, they sort them out. Prior to that, there's probably a meeting, a very brief elders meeting. Sometimes at the end of the meeting you see them in the other room, going in there with the suits looking all important, and they'll go and discuss what it is that's happened and what it is that's going to happen as well. Remember, these men go by a book, skin the flock or something of such nature, and they will then put together their action plan. They don't necessarily always know how they're going to deal with it, in as much as will it be private reproof, public reproof, disfellowshipping. They don't always know, so just bear that in mind. So they won't always know what they're going to do, but then they'll go meet with a person, talk to them. If it's of a sexual nature, normally, I don't know why, but they ask some sort of horny questions. I wonder whether sometimes they get a kick out of it. I certainly never did. Wasn't interested. I was just more interested in the person's soul, if you like. I suppose you could say that. Looks like Russell's tomb, doesn't it? That's what was my magnum focus. But then they'll meet with them. Then that'll be the end of it for that section of the meeting. And then what they'll do is they'll ask the person to wait outside while they deliberate, and they'll think of what scriptures they can bore the person to death with, and they'll think of what they can say to them and what their decision's going to be. If it's that straightforward, they can do it in that meeting. Then they ask the person to come back in who's all nervous, and then they say what their decision is, whether it's disfellowship, public reproof, private reproof, or just no evidence that they can actually do anything. And then they'll work at it from there. There'll be the usual 7 days to appeal. Obviously the Holy Spirit doesn't work very well. The Holy Spirit needs coffee to get it going in the morning. The Holy Spirit isn't God's way of communication, so obviously they give 7 days. So after that 7 days, if there's an appeal, then it will be brought usually to a different body of elders. Now I figured that in the case of Ethan and Ondu 2, those elders already knew that they were going to disfellowship him. They'd worked that out in advance. They knew what they were going to do. So that's what they did, because Ethan was brilliant. Oh, magnificent. Wow, say magnificent. Absolutely stupendously magnificent. But those elders weren't listening to his arguments. They weren't listening to his reasoning. They weren't listening to whether Ethan had a point or not. See a little squidgel going across there. I think in America they call him a squirrel. Now in the UK you can see that little squidge. I know you probably can't see him. He's got a little tinge of red, and I understand what happened is Canadian or American squirrels came over to this country and interbred with the British squirrels, and now the poor little bleeders are all grey with a hint of red. You don't really see red squirrels anymore. But that's beside the point. Ethan, they knew what they were going to do before they did it. They knew they were going to disfellowship him on that second meeting. You can tell the way they went in there, they were just totally on the attack. Totally on the attack all the time. Weren't listening to a thing that Ethan said. And that's sad. But that just about sums it up for judicial committees. I wasn't involved in too many. I never really volunteered. Because as I said earlier, when they have the elders meeting, they usually pick the volunteers or somebody. 3 victims who are going to go and be on that committee. I didn't volunteer very often. I didn't like judicial committees. I didn't really feel as if I could judge. It scared me. I didn't want to put anybody out of the congregation because I didn't feel as if I had the right to judge another human. Obviously the elders in the Ethan Hatcher case felt that they did. They felt that they were better than anybody else. They felt that they could render God's judgment because, well, let's face it, Jehovah's Witnesses are God's prophets as far as they're concerned. Whether they'll admit to it or not is another matter.